Okay, hello everybody. I'm Bonnie Urbay, host of the PBS Weekly Women's News Analysis Show, To the Contrary. And with me today are Kelli Musick. She's a 2015 grad of the University of Mary Washington, and she's now a college organizer with the Feminist Majority. And we have Lauren Cooley, who's at the University of Miami, located in Florida, and but covering college issues for the Washington Examiner. So hello to both of you, and thank you for joining me. My first question is, what are college women thinking? And Kelli, why don't we start with you? What are college women thinking about the whole Kavanaugh situation?
I think college women are outraged, and I think they're horrified by what we've seen both throughout August and September, looking at Brett Kavanaugh's policies and his stances on particular issues that affect young women. But I think in light of Dr. Ford's testimony and the other allegations from women from Judge Kavanaugh's past, I think college women know all too well sexual violence, unfortunately, and they're horrified that we are still engaged in this nomination process.
Lauren, do you have the same perspective at the University of Miami?
Well, I think that college women definitely time where this discussion about women's rights, how women are treated, is an uncomfortable position to be in, because I think it's, one, a hard conversation to have, and two, a lot of people are not really saying the right things, are not sensitive about it, don't even understand it. But I think when it comes specifically to what's going on with Brett Kavanaugh and Dr. Ford, there's still a lot of us that want to see the process play out. And I think it's just unfortunate for both sides that it's really become this political.
I don't know if you watched the Senate news conference this afternoon, but when Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and the Chairman Grassley of the Judiciary Committee came out with three similarly old white men. Not that we have anything against old white men. My husband is one, and my father was one, and they're the favorite people in my life. But I'm just saying, generally speaking, what were the visuals like to see that? Did either one of you watch the news conference?
I did watch part of it, and for me, it's really difficult to boil down something like this to what someone looks like. What, do I like to see diversity on a TV screen? Absolutely. Do I think that it's unfortunate that everyone on the committee that was dealing with interviews that was a Republican was an old white man? Yeah, I think it would have been better to have some women on that committee to be able to speak from a different perspective. But again, I think intellectual diversity is much more important than the way people look.
What about you?
I mean, I think it's just part and parcel for what we've seen throughout this process. I mean, I like to think of Justice Ginsburg's quote, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court when there are 9? I think the same could be said for, participation in the United States Congress. I think this would have been a very, very different process and a very different outcome for all the folks involved if there would have been any woman that was on the Republican side of the Senate Judiciary Committee, not including Rachel Mitchell.
Well, I mean, but again, if you look at Dianne Feinstein, she held on to that letter for much longer than she should have. And there's questions about, was she or her staff the ones that leaked it, and really treating Dr. Ford more as a political pawn than a victim that needed to be respected for privacy reasons and everything else. And so the way that—
well, wait a second. What you said just kind of contradicted yourself. You said on the one hand, she held on to the letter, which she was doing for confidentiality reasons, because Dr. Blasey Ford had asked her not to reveal her name. But then you said her staff or somebody on her staff released it and didn't obey the confidentiality request of Dr. Ford.
Right, but at some point, this could have been brought forward even anonymously, and for a while just sat on the letter completely. And my point in this is that your gender does not mean that you're going to handle something correctly with sensitivity, or that you're not going to. I know that some of the greatest supporters in my life on very sensitive issues have been men. And so for me to say that just because men are the ones handling this, quite frankly, I think that some of the men that have handled this have done a fantastic job. Some haven't. Some had more sensitivity, some haven't. So to really boil this down to what gender each side is on, I think is kind of ridiculous, especially when you can look and say that there's a lot of women that are members of the Republican Party that do serve as elected officials of Republicans. And so I think a lot of Republicans have handled this well. Some haven't.
Kelli, tell me about college students watching the whole proceedings. I think the day that Kavanaugh and Dr. Blasey Ford were testifying, just about everybody in America was attached to his or her cell phone, TV set, what have you. What about college students? You guys are right in the middle of a semester now, right?
Yeah, so I know that college students were among many of the folks watching, this hearing and this entire process. But from the firsthand knowledge that I have, college students have not just been watching, they've been constantly calling their senators and telling them that, regardless of who the next pick is, this nomination should not go, this job promotion should not go to Brett Kavanaugh. He's exhibited none of the temperament and none of the policies that are representative of a Supreme Court justice. And I think watching this process drag on and watching trauma after trauma be thrust into the mainstream television and social media platforms, I think has been really troubling and really triggering and re-traumatizing to a lot of college students, many of whom were in college during the incredibly controversial 2016 election and are finding themselves, again, frustrated with their political representatives and feeling let down by their government.
What about, and I'll get to you, Lauren, in a second, but what was the reaction of college women to President Trump yesterday mocking Blasey Ford?
Horror, rage. I know that several of our interns who are survivors of sexual violence themselves broke down crying, because to see the leader of your country mock a survivor of sexual violence who has done one of the most terrifying things that you could ever ask a survivor to do, to tell her story on a national stage, to be judged for her credibility and her authenticity, and then have her president mock her, it's horrifying, and it's just ultimately wrong. And it's something we never, ever dreamed that would be so low he would do.
Lauren, your thoughts about President Trump mocking Blasey Ford?
Right. I mean, first of all, do I wish that he had done what he had done? No. I think that his earlier comments were a lot more appropriate. However, I think even using the phrase mock is, I don't know, I think that's inserting an opinion to what he was doing. President Trump is loud.
Well, did you go to the party? I don't remember. Did you know the house? Where was
that you're talking? But that's the way that he acts at rallies. I've been to several Trump rallies, and that's just kind of how he grandiose and loudness. And I think what he was criticizing was not a survivor of sexual assault, but someone who he finds not to be credible in their testimony. And so,
but was it?
But he's called her credible before.
Wait, Lauren, was he acting like a United States president? To even
he's acting like Donald Trump, and he is our president.
No, but I mean, as someone who sees, I've covered Washington for 30 some odd years now, and who I've covered many administrations, probably 4 or 5 different administrations, and to watch a president do that, is he denigrating the office of the presidency? It's without precedent.
Well, you're absolutely right. It's without precedent that we have a president that talks the way he does, tweets the way he does. But this is, starting to go down a whole different discussion of, is President Trump presidential? And what I would say is he was elected because of the way that he is. He's Donald Trump, and I don't think anybody can really be like him. I mean, you look at even other elections going on in the midterms, people who try to act like Donald Trump don't necessarily even do as well in the polling. And so he's a one of a kind, and I'll give you that. But I think his point was that after this FBI investigation has gone through, looking at the things that Dr. Ford said during her testimony, now looking at what the FBI has come out with other testimony from Dr. Ford's ex-boyfriend, etc., I think that what he was getting to was that she's not as credible as some of us believed at the beginning. Granted, I do think President Trump's tone was like President Trump. It was not the way that I would have handled it. It's not the way other presidents would have handled it. But I think knowing the guy who was saying these things, I don't know if he was mocking. I think he was just being President Trump.
All right. Now, last question. If he's approved, Kelli, what's going to happen on college campuses across America? Are women going to quietly keep studying? Are they going to go out and, you know, knock out windows of liquor stores and protest? What are they going to do?
I will never claim to speak for all college women or all women, in fact, but I know that from the conversations I've had, from the stories that I've seen shared, you know, there are a couple different reactions that I think we will see if, in fact, Brett Kavanaugh is confirmed. I mean, we know.
Wrap it up in about 30 seconds, please.
We know that survivors will be pushed back into the shadows. Seeing an accused sexual predator and sexual assailant on the highest court of the land is trauma in and of itself, and survivors will be afraid to speak out. I also know that there will be rage.
Rage, right, okay.
And we will mobilize.
Okay, and Lauren, your thoughts. What will conservative women do on college campuses across the country?
Well, look, I think that, first of all, to assume that Brett Kavanaugh is a rapist or a sexual predator is really jumping the gun there. There's really no evidence of that. The FBI has come out and said that. And so I think it's slander and libel what's really happened to him. Women in general, I think the way that they can do something about this entire thing is to have better conversations on their own campuses, with their friends, with their peers, and be able to strike a balance between this is the reality that some women face, and here's the way that we can be more sensitive about it. But at the same time, I think there's women like myself who are a little older thinking about, you know, one day we may have sons. We want to make sure that the due process is there for them as well. And so really the thing that women can do on college campuses is to be the ones that create conversations that are sensitive on both sides.
All right, terrific. Thank you both for your time. This was Kelli Musick from the Feminist Majority Foundation, a campus organizer, and Lauren Cooley, of the University of Miami and the Washington Examiner, joining us to talk about how college women are seeing the Kavanaugh spectacle. Thank you for joining us, and please come back.
Thank you so much.